I am quite excited to share a little bit of the Invincible story with you all today. First up, standard statements. Do not make any financial decisions about what I'm about to say. I would also like to acknowledge the Indigenous people, particularly the Malayaguli and the Naju people, on which the grounds where St. Ives works. Deepest respects to their ancestors, members of their community, and the past, present, and emerging leaders. Quick overview for those who don't know where St. Ives is, or Invincible. It's about 75 k's that way, south of us, right on Kambowda, the Tyneside, just south of that, on Lake Lefroy. We have, our tenement package is roughly 60 k's by about 40 k's, with an active mine corridor of about 2,000 hectares. Our geology is mainly bounded by the Boulder Lefroy to the east and the Zalika Abattoir on the west. So just a quick overview of what Invincible looks like now. So that's the picture of the main pit with the north pit over there, waste dumps in the foreground. So you can see the main mine corridor coming down the centre, and Invincible is off to the west on the hinge of the limb of the antiform. Bit of mag, because I like mag. So you can see the north pit, central pit, and we've just started mining the footwall south pit to the south there last year. So the mineralisation at Invincible is no smaller than 5 k's long and 1.5 kilometres deep. You can see it is offset by the Alpha Island in the middle there that separates the central to the south. The Alpha Island itself isn't mineralised, but it does offset our mineralisation. So that's just the as-built there. So you can see we have the extent of the ore loads do dip off to the south. And that's just the R&R from last year. And then a bit of gold from Footwall South down there. We'll just go through a little bit on the stratigraphy at St. Ives and then into Invincible. So first up, most people are probably familiar with a strat column, very similar to that from the general Greater Eastern Goldfields area. So we're quite blessed at St. Ives where we actually have the full stratigraphy from the Lunnon and the Kamalia all the way up to the Lake Basin exposed at site. And as a consequence, we have deposits pretty much all over site as well. There's at least 60 deposits found already at St. Ives, and they do spread across the full stratigraphy. Invincible itself, it is one of our later deposits that we have found, and it is at that top of the Lake Basin Black Flags contact. So hanging wall, we've got a interbedded, well-sorted, well-rounded, cross-bedded quartz-rich sandstone with a polymictic conglomerate. Polymictic is it's got population of all the other stratigraphies on site within those conglomerates. Below that is what we call the mudstone. So it is a fine-grained, laminated siltstone mudstone, little bit fine sand occasionally. And for a lot of Invincible's history, this was our host rock for mineralisation. This was one of the most important units that we would be exploring for in that zone. Below that, we have the grits, what we call the grits now. It is very similar to the hanging wall sandstones, although it is a little less mature. It's a little bit more subangular. There are a lot more lithic fragments through it. It's not as well bedded, and you really don't see any cross beds. The beds are quite large. And there's a lot of subunits in there that are just more like pebbly sandstones. This one has become a bit more important to us mineralisation-wise, and we do get quite a bit of our mineralisation in this footwall sand again. Below that is what we refer to as a mafic conglomerate. It's another polymictic conglomerate with a bit more of a fine sand to silt matrix in there. It is polymictic, but it does have a dominance of andesite and mafic class within it. And geochemically, it is quite distinct from all the other conglomerates around the Invincible deposit. This one has become quite important to us because when a lot of the structures do roll through here, this one blinks quite a bit with gold. And then below that, we've got the andesite. So that's a mixture of true andesite flows, autobreccia, reworked sediments that are andesitic in nature. Now that you kind of know what our base stratigraphy looks like, what does the gold actually look like now? This is a schematic of what we think a lot of that mineralization looks like. So there is roughly 2 styles of mineralization that you can classify at Invincible. You have your upright lodes in the mudstone, and they're quite, they're brecciated. And then you have another set of flatter lying veins, more dominantly in the footwall, although those flatter veins do come into the mudstone as well. So high-grade gold at Invincible looks like this. So it's brecciated quartz carb veins, plus or minus pyrite, range of micas, pyrite, what do I got there? And then with a quite strong albite selvage. So that coffee color stuff is a bit of rutile mixed in with the albite, but it comes up quite visual. So when you see stuff like that, you know you're going high gold. So this is what it looks like in the walls and the faces underground. So it is quite a visual ore. And you can see some of those flat veins cross-cutting the breccias. We do get low grade as well in the mudstone. So the mineralogy of the veins themselves look very similar to the high grade, but the selvages are that lower grade mica, so the phengite, cerussite, as opposed to the albite for the higher grade. As you can see in the faces there, it looks very similar structurally to the high grade gold, but it is, when you see the green as opposed to the brown, you know it's high and low grade. So our footwall mineralization, so this goes from the grits, the conglomerate, and all the way into the andesite, these veins go. So in core, they will look quite large, bucky quartz with VG, little bits of sulfide, and that's pretty much it. So the veins themselves in these ones are they're not that exciting compared to the breccia veins, but it's that selvage that you really need to look for to know if it's grade or not. And often it will be that pervasive hematite and fine-grained disseminated sulfide all the way through. Sometimes you do get some little accessory things like specular hematite or fluorite in those veins, but it's mainly looking like that. So they are flat-lying and dipping to the south, but we are seeing that a lot of these veins are congregating around these upright structures that you can see here on this, that you can see here. So you have this structure, and then these veins actually roll up into them all through the footwall. So that's what they look like underground. So that's actually a shear in there, and you can see the sigmoidal veins of the extensional veins going through them. And then as they come out, they're a little bit more flat. But you can see the pervasive hematite alteration all the way through. And it does nugget quite a bit in the footwall as well as the main mudstone. But this is a bit of footwall gold there. So structurally, our structural story at Invincible actually is only a couple of years old. The main, from discovery in, 12 to probably 22, we were going on, a lot of Invincible was really lithologically based. So there would be a system coming up, but it was based on mudstones, the key bits and pieces in the footwall. Then we started the structural story, and it's changed quite a bit. So this is the schematic of what we're running through at the moment. We think Invincible is actually a thrust duplex system with multiple shears coming up, and that's what the feeders and the controls for mineralization at Invincible. This wasn't as important when we were exploring and mining out the mudstone, because these thrusts were so frequent that even at 200 meter spacings, you'll hit one in every hole. It was more in the footwall where we actually needed to understand what was controlling the array of footwall veins, and the structures have really localized us into it, and we can pretty much hit them every time now. So this is just a snip of our leapfrog model of it. So all the mudstone mineralization is above the orange structure here. We're looking west-ish, obliquely, and these are our three main structures that are controlling the mineralization at footwall, at Invincible. So we have the Morgan Island, the Dundas, and the Collingwood. So looking at the Morgan Island shear first, this one runs very close to the contact of the bottom of the mudstone and the top of the grits. You see it in the wall, so that's mudstone, that's sandstone, the shear gums right across, and more often than not, it is highly mineralized right along that contact, both in the mudstone and in the footwall side. So you'll get breccia veins off into, you'll have breccia veins in the mudstone, and then it swings off into extensional veins on the footwall side. So it's the same system, it's just expressing itself in two different ways based on the host. When you get them in core, the Morgan Island is always super obvious. It is a very sheared contact, and it's hard to place exactly where the mud to the sand kind of comes at. When I say shears, it's quite monolithic in it. So moving on to the Dundas. So this is well into the footwall, so it will go through both the grits and the mafic conglomerate. Often it will express itself in a semi-ductile, brittle zone, but it will still show that hematite all the way through, veins coming in and out, and this is what it looks like underground. So you can see the structure up and down. So that picture from before, you've got the structure and then the veins coming off it. So that's in a side drive going through, like one of these types of drives. You just, yeah, and they will swing off both sides of the Dundas. Then going down into the Collingwood. So this one is closer to the andesite grits contact on that lower side. We have traced it both in the andesite true and in here, so it will wiggle around that contact. It's not a true contact shear, but it is mineralized as well. This is the least defined of all of our shears at the moment, but we have enough data that we can confidently predict where it's going to go and when it's mineralized. It's often a skinnier zone of mineralization in the Collingwood than the other two, but it is consistently there, and you will get the large extensional veins heading off towards the grit side. And because it is in the andesite as opposed to the sediments, it does look quite a bit different when you do drill through it. Just a quick review of Invincible over time, and you can see the growth of Invincible. So in 2011 is when we kind of drilled our discovery hole, and we went to work pretty hard at the beginning, declaring our maiden resource of 250,000 ounces in 2012. And we were mining it in 2015. So that's quite a pace that we took that at, but you can see it as it grows past the Alpha Island into the south, and we went deep as well fast. So we kind of expanded quite a bit. So this is a bit more of a note to the explorers in the room, as opposed to, I know we're looking at an underground and everyone's a bit production minded, but this is for the explorers. So part of the success of Invincible and part of its speedy success was that the explorers stayed in the game even after we handed over to them in 2015. Yes, open pits started taking over and underground took over as well, but exploration still stayed in, and we pushed that, and we went big, we went far, and we kept the understanding of what's happening at Invincible moving. So if anyone did hear the discovery story back at Newgen, I think it was 14 or 15, the geology and the structure and the understanding of the mineralization would have looked very different. If this talk was given 5 years ago, it would also look different to the Newgen talk and this talk. If I give this talk again in another couple years, it will probably look different again. So it's really important to keep cycle backing even into our current mines that make sure that you are exploring every possibility, because the understanding of what's happening at any deposit does change over time. And that's where the exciting is, right? And you can see that in the straight resource numbers, right? So we discovered it in 11. By 15, we started mining, but we actually started to explore south and the potential of what's happening over in south in 15. And the numbers did a jump. We started doing big frameworks and pushing bigger stories in 17, 18, and the numbers have jumped again. We started really converting our footwall loads and understanding them back in 22, and the jumps again, right? So every time you have a shift in the way that exploration understands what's going on, you can make those cosmic leaps in the actual resource as well. So it's not just in the arm-waving world, it actually comes out in the numbers. Thank you. I also want to thank all the geos that have ever been part of Invincible over the last decade. There are a lot of you, and as Sam said in his talk, discovery is not one person, and building a deposit like that is not one person either. It's a crew of people. So thank you all.